She's the woman who interviewed the Pope after 10 years of begging. But now, Norah O'Donnell is fighting for her life. While doctors cut a 3-inch chunk out of her back, CBS executives were planning her replacement. The $8 million star was about to lose everything. Her job, her health. Even her famous cool finally cracked when her young son asked the question that broke her heart. "Is there a chance you could die from this?" Norah O'Donnell was born in Washington, D.C. in 1974, into a military family with deep Irish roots. Her father served as a U.S. Army officer for 30 years, which meant constant moves and a life shaped by discipline, change, and a close connection to global events. Her parents respected journalists, and that respect rubbed off on Norah early. She grew up knowing that news wasn't just something on TV, it was something that affected real people, including her own family. By the time she was 3, the family moved to San Antonio, Texas. But the biggest change came when she was 10. Her father got assigned to Seoul, South Korea. They lived on a massive military base in the middle of the city, and for 2 years, that place became home. Decades later, Norah would return and walk through those same streets, pointing out her old room and even the landing pad where President Reagan had once arrived by helicopter. Those moments stuck with her. Every time they moved, whether to Korea, Germany, or back to the US, the news was her way of keeping a sense of connection to the world. While in Seoul, something unexpected happened. Norah landed her first job on TV. She started working for an educational program that taught English to Korean students. Every week, she stood in front of the camera and read out phrases in English. It may have seemed like a small thing at the time, but it was her first real broadcasting experience. She even joked years later that she hoped those old tapes would never be shown on TV again. Still, they showed a kid who already had the calm, clear delivery of someone meant to be in front of a camera. When the family moved back to San Antonio, Norah picked up where she left off. She went to MacArthur High School and threw herself into school life. She joined clubs, ran track, led the cheerleading team, and earned a reputation for being focused and driven. Her teachers noticed. They encouraged her. That support helped build the confidence she carried into Georgetown University, where she studied philosophy. By her senior year, she was interning at ABC News. That internship wasn't just a college project. It was the first real step into the world she'd dreamed of. From the beginning, she looked up to Barbara Walters. Norah didn't just admire her. She copied her voice, her manner, everything. Walters wasn't just another anchor. She was the only woman interviewing world leaders on television. For Norah, she was proof that a woman could sit across from presidents and ask the hard questions. When Walters died in 2022, Norah wrote that she was the reason she became a journalist. And it wasn't just Barbara. Norah paid attention to every woman on the news, on national shows, and in local stations in whatever city her family moved to. Norah O'Donnell didn't start in front of the cameras. Her journey began in the world of print journalism, working as a staff writer for Roll Call, a newspaper focused on politics in Washington, D.C. It wasn't glamorous, but it was intense. At just 24, she was covering one of the biggest political stories of the decade, President Bill Clinton's impeachment. That kind of pressure would shake most young reporters, but Norah held her ground. Her coverage of the Monica Lewinsky scandal wasn't just sharp, it stood out. And while most reporters were struggling just to keep up, she was already building a reputation as someone who could break down complex political chaos into sharp, gripping stories. For 5 years, she followed politicians across the country, covering congressional elections, forming connections, and sharpening her skills. That early grind gave her the foundation she needed and opened the door to something much bigger. In 1999, Norah stepped into the world of television. At NBC News and MSNBC, she didn't waste time. Starting in the Washington bureau, she quickly proved herself as more than just another fresh face. By 2001, she was reporting from the Pentagon on September 11th. That moment changed everything. She followed Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld to Afghanistan and covered the fallout of the war with fearless precision. Her work won her the Sigma Delta Chi Award for breaking news, but more importantly, it marked her as someone who could be trusted in moments of national crisis. As the years rolled on, she became a regular presence on screen. She anchored Weekend Today, filled in for MSNBC Live, and in 2004, she was promoted to White House correspondent. From Capitol Hill to the Pentagon to the White House, Norah wasn't just reporting, she was everywhere. As her on-screen presence grew, so did her reputation for fearless political reporting. In 2002, she uncovered a major scoop: plans by the Bush administration to prepare for war in Iraq, long before the public announcement. She dug deep, asked tough questions, and forced the White House to answer. During the heated 2004 election between Bush and Kerry, she was on the front lines again, chasing both campaigns and landing interviews others couldn't. One moment that turned heads came during a press conference with President Bush in Texas. She challenged him on the missing weapons of mass destruction. It was tense, and it made headlines. She'd already proven herself in print. Now she was proving she could do the same on national television. But Norah didn't stop at just reporting. From 2002 to 2011, she became a familiar face on Sunday morning talk shows. She appeared regularly on The Chris Matthews Show and even hosted Hardball as a substitute. Her political analysis was sharp, but more than that, it was clear. She didn't ramble. She made sense of the chaos in Washington and called out the doublespeak. In one memorable episode of Hardball, she interviewed Senator Joe Biden and grilled him on his position on the Iraq War. That interview took off, shared, quoted, and replayed over and over. Her growing influence brought even more visibility, including a role moderating debates during the 2008 primaries. By then, Norah wasn't just a journalist. She was a voice people listened to when politics got messy. Then came the Emmy. In 2009, she was part of NBC's team covering the 2008 election night broadcast, a 10-hour live marathon. It wasn't easy. Results were coming in fast, emotions were high, and every second counted. But Norah was in her element. She read exit polls, interviewed political heavyweights, and explained the shifting map to millions of viewers. That night, her poise and precision earned her an Emmy for outstanding live coverage. It wasn't just a trophy, it was a turning point. It proved what many already suspected. Norah O'Donnell wasn't just part of the news. She was becoming one of the faces that defined it. Norah O'Donnell had already made a name for herself at NBC, but in 2011, she took a leap that would change everything. After 12 years of working her way up the ladder, she left the familiar behind and moved to CBS News. This wasn't just a new job, it was a big gamble. She stepped into the role of chief White House correspondent and also became the fill-in anchor for Face the Nation. It was a bold move, timed perfectly to put her in the spotlight during the 2012 election. CBS didn't pick her randomly. They wanted someone with real Washington experience, someone who had covered the White House, Congress, and the Pentagon. That someone was Norah. It was a risk, but it paid off. Barely a year later, in 2012, Norah landed a seat at the anchor desk of CBS This Morning. This changed everything again. Now she wasn't just reporting the news, she was part of the team waking up America every day. With Gayle King and Charlie Rose by her side, the show finally started to compete with the morning giants on NBC and ABC. Norah brought sharp political insight, strong interviews, and a calm but commanding presence. She didn't water herself down for morning TV. Instead, she proved that hard news had a place with breakfast. Ratings went up, critics took notice, and viewers started tuning in to see what Norah had to say. It wasn't just good for CBS, it was a turning point in her career. In 2018, she took her journalism to another level. For 6 months, she investigated sexual assault at the U.S. Air Force Academy. What she found was heartbreaking. Cadets who reported assaults were often punished instead of protected. Norah sat with survivors, listened to their painful stories, and gave them the voice they had been denied. One former cadet, Emily Hazen, shared how her attacker harassed her and still graduated, while she was forced to leave. Another insider, who once led the Academy's sexual assault prevention program, confirmed the retaliation. This wasn't just a report, it was a wake-up call. The work earned Norah and CBS This Morning an Emmy, but more than that, it proved her dedication to the kind of journalism that makes a real difference. But Norah didn't just make waves on camera. After Charlie Rose was fired for sexual misconduct in 2017, she became a guiding force behind the scenes at CBS. On air, she spoke out firmly and fearlessly. Off air, she worked to change the culture. She mentored younger women, pushed for fairness, and stood up for those who felt unheard. She teamed up with CBS News President Susan Zirinsky to build a better newsroom, one that valued inclusion, compassion, and equality. Norah often said this would be the century of women, and she meant it. She didn't climb the ladder just for herself. She held it steady for the ones coming after her. When Norah O'Donnell was chosen to anchor the CBS Evening News in 2019, it wasn't just a promotion. It was a moment that made headlines across the country. She became only the third woman ever to sit in that iconic anchor chair at CBS. It was a powerful step forward, and it came during a time when the network was going through big changes. Just 17 months after Jeff Glor had taken the job, Norah stepped in. She didn't try to sound flashy. She just said it was humbling, and that said it all. Behind the scenes, CBS News President Susan Zirinsky made it clear. Norah wasn't just another anchor. She was one of the best in the business, someone who could bring trust, truth, and clarity every night. But Norah didn't stop at just taking the job. She did something no one expected. She moved the whole show from New York to Washington, D.C. That had never been done before, not by CBS, not by anyone else. It was bold, risky, and incredibly smart. With politics dominating the news cycle, being right there in the nation's capital gave her direct access to power, to the lawmakers, to the decisions being made in real time. Norah explained it simply. So many major stories, healthcare, taxes, even social issues, start in Washington. If you're closer to the source, you can report it better. And that's exactly what she did. From the start, Norah had a vision. She didn't just want to read headlines, she wanted to dig deeper. Her show focused on big issues, hard investigations, and interviews that actually meant something. She wasn't chasing viral moments, she was chasing the truth. That's why she ended up talking to people like Pope Francis, something few anchors ever get to do. And that's also why she pushed for stories others ignored, like the disturbing reports of sexual assault in the U.S. military. Her work won awards, Emmys, Murrows, DuPonts, not just because it looked good on TV, but because it mattered. She even anchored from war zones, aircraft carriers, and global hotspots. She didn't just talk about the world, she went out and showed it. Then came COVID-19. The world changed overnight, and so did the way news was delivered. While many anchors stayed in studios, Norah stayed on the front lines. She interviewed Dr. Anthony Fauci when Americans were desperate for answers. That Zoom call in October 2020, streamed live and aired that night, came right when the White House itself was being called a super-spreader site. Fauci didn't hold back, and Norah didn't try to soften it. She knew her job was to deliver the truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. She made it clear, science and facts would lead the way on her watch. Norah O'Donnell had spent 10 years chasing something most reporters only dream about: an interview with the Pope. From the moment she joined CBS in 2014, she made it her mission. Year after year, she kept trying, sending more than 75 formal requests to the Vatican. She even brought American cardinals into the mix, flew to Rome 7 times, and built ties with 3 different Vatican media chiefs. All of that effort paid off in late 2023, when a carefully written letter finally opened the door. When the Vatican replied with interest, Norah didn't call her boss. She called her mother. The interview took place inside the Vatican's majestic apostolic palace. The production setup was massive: 14 cameras, tight security, and weeks of planning. Norah had only been promised 15 minutes, but when that time ran out, Pope Francis waved away his aides and kept talking. 1 hour later, the cameras were still rolling. It was the first time any pope had ever done an interview with an American TV network. Norah had just made broadcast history. What followed was just as shocking as the moment itself. The Pope spoke openly about topics the Church usually avoids. He called for compassion around surrogacy, saying that for some women, it may be their only chance. He defended blessings for same-sex couples and challenged those who were offended by it, asking, why? But he was also clear about limits. He firmly said no to female priests and no to church-approved surrogacy. When asked about the Church's handling of abuse cases, he admitted the failures and said more still needed to be done. He even made headlines with a strong plea for peace in the Middle East, urging a focus on the suffering of children. When the interview aired on May 19, 2024, it exploded online. Over 127 million views poured in within 2 days. In Latin America, where people watched him speak in Spanish, the reaction was especially intense. Around the world, Catholic groups split in their reactions, some angry, some hopeful. The Vatican's own newspaper ran 7 full pages just to analyze the conversation. Presidents, bishops, and news anchors all weighed in. Ratings for CBS went through the roof, and Norah O'Donnell cemented her place as one of the world's most powerful interviewers. But behind the scenes, things weren't so perfect. In 2022, a damaging article came out, accusing Norah of creating a toxic work environment. Former employees said she regularly exploded at her team over hair and makeup, especially her bronzer. One person described her throwing a fit during the pandemic over a makeup issue while people were dying from COVID. She was also known for demanding full dress rehearsals before each show, which many said added unnecessary stress and tension. Some staff even compared her to the cold boss from The Devil Wears Prada. Her team denied all of it, but the stories stuck. When she stepped down from the anchor desk in early 2025, some believed those tensions played a role. Then came the wardrobe scandal. Reports said Norah had a $65,000 yearly clothing allowance at a time when CBS was laying off staff and cutting costs. Insiders said she refused to wear cheaper clothes and insisted on high-end designers. It didn't help that her wardrobe budget became public, just as the network was trying to save money. Her publicist didn't deny the allowance, but said the numbers were off. Still, the damage was done. Many inside CBS saw it as a symbol of how out of touch the top stars were with the struggles of the newsroom. Rumors of rivalry didn't help her image either. For years, people speculated about tension between Norah and fellow CBS star Gayle King. In 2019, when Norah got promoted to lead anchor, Gayle addressed it on air, insisting there was no feud. But behind the scenes, whispers continued. Sources said both women saw themselves as the face of CBS News. When the network's president resigned in 2023, things heated up even more. Norah was polished, formal, and serious. Gayle was casual, warm, and friendly. It wasn't just a clash of styles, it was a power struggle. One final blow came early in her time as anchor. While reporting on sexual harassment allegations against opera star Placido Domingo, Norah was caught on a hot mic muttering, "Sounds like somebody else here." Viewers immediately wondered who she was talking about. Some believed she was referring to disgraced CBS figures like Les Moonves or Charlie Rose. The line was quickly deleted from the online version, but the damage was done. It was a rare moment where her guarded public image cracked, just enough to stir up controversy. Norah O'Donnell had been the face of CBS Evening News for years. Calm, confident, and trusted by millions, she delivered the biggest stories night after night. But on July 30th, 2024, something unexpected happened. She announced she was stepping down. It wasn't just the news that shocked people. It was the timing. It came just as the U.S. presidential election was heating up, when news anchors are usually locked in, not walking away. Her reason? She simply wanted change. After 12 years in the anchor chair, she felt it was time to do something different. More long-form interviews, deeper stories. At first, no one mentioned her health. The network made it sound like a smooth, well-planned shift. It even matched up perfectly with their fall programming announcements. But behind the scenes, it wasn't so simple. After the announcement, talks between Norah and CBS got complicated fast. The new president of CBS News, Wendy McMahon, had big plans, but so did Norah. They wanted to find a role that played to her strengths, but also gave her more freedom and time off. The negotiations stretched over 6 weeks, with 17 separate meetings. At one point, things nearly collapsed completely. The problem? Her involvement in 60 Minutes. Norah wanted to stay part of it, but not full-time. In the end, they struck a deal. She'd do up to 8 special pieces a year. Her new title would be Senior Correspondent and Special Anchor. It was more flexible, more tailored. She could chase important interviews, work on investigative stories, and still take time off if her health demanded it. Then came the money talk. Norah used to make $8 million a year as anchor. That was going to change. When the new deal was signed on April 1st, 2025, her base pay dropped to $3.8 million. It was a big cut, over 50%. But it wasn't all bad. If her reports brought in high viewership, she could earn bonuses that pushed her total to $5.5 million. Plus, CBS gave her a production company, Norah O'Donnell Productions. It came with a $2 million deal to develop documentaries and shows for the network. So while her anchor salary dropped, her total potential earnings were still strong, up to $7.5 million a year. Throughout her long and successful career, Norah O'Donnell never stopped moving forward. She went from a writer at Roll Call to becoming a White House correspondent at NBC, and later she climbed all the way to the top as anchor of CBS Evening News. It was a job many journalists could only dream of. But in the months before she stepped down, a question kept bothering her. Can you really leave when you're at the top? That question wasn't just about career. It came from deep inside, from someone who had spent her whole life chasing the next story. She was 51. She had made it. She had sat in the same seat once held by Walter Cronkite. But over Christmas in 2024, she did something different. She paused. For 2 weeks, she turned everything off and spent time with her husband and their 3 kids. No breaking news, no deadlines, just family. It was the first time she allowed herself to imagine a different kind of life. One with quiet mornings, dinners without phone calls, and maybe even some peace. Jokingly, she told people, "If something breaks in the world and I leave, my husband will divorce me." But behind the joke was something real. That short break opened her eyes. For years, the pressure had built up. She had even gone to therapy to deal with the constant stress. And when the day came to finally sign off, even after all the planning, the emotions hit harder than she expected. She felt lost, uncertain about what came next, unsure of who she was without the job that had defined her. And just when she started trying to figure that out, her body began sending signals she couldn't ignore. Norah O'Donnell was in the middle of a busy Black Friday crowd when her life suddenly changed. She wasn't thinking about anything serious, just some holiday shopping. Then her phone buzzed. It was an email from her dermatologist. She stepped aside to check it, expecting something routine. But the words on the screen stunned her. She had melanoma, the most dangerous kind of skin cancer. In the middle of all the noise and lights, Norah felt her world freeze. She started crying right there in the store. Her chest tightened, and she couldn't breathe properly. She kept asking herself, "How could this happen? I've always taken care of myself." When she finally made it home, she was still in shock. Over the next few weeks, her mind kept racing. What would happen to her family? Her career? Would she be okay? In January, she went through a major surgery. Doctors removed a 3-inch patch of skin from her back, cutting deep to make sure every trace of cancer was gone. It wasn't just 1 or 2 stitches. She needed 3 layers of them, about 20 in total. For 6 weeks, she wasn't allowed to work out. That hit her hard. She always used exercise to manage stress. And now, even that was gone. She felt low. She missed her routine. And worst of all, she had to find a way to explain everything to her kids. Her youngest son even asked her, "Is there a chance you could die from this?" That question haunted her. As she started healing, Norah began learning more about melanoma. The more she learned, the more she realized how at risk she had always been. Growing up in sunny San Antonio, she spent years cheering, running track, and soaking up the sun. She even used tanning beds back in the day, long before anyone knew how dangerous they were. Her light skin and family history didn't help either. Now she knows that indoor tanning can raise the risk of melanoma by 75%. She was stunned. She started speaking out about it, sharing that tanning beds were more dangerous than she ever imagined, even more dangerous than smoking when it comes to cancer. But knowing all this didn't stop the guilt from creeping in. Norah couldn't stop blaming herself. She kept thinking about the dermatologist appointment she skipped, about the times she ignored the warnings, about how long it had been since she got her moles checked. And most painfully, she admitted something many people think, but rarely say out loud. Maybe I could have prevented this? She looked back at her younger self, going to tanning salons for a quick glow, and felt the weight of regret. But she didn't want to stay stuck in that guilt. Instead, she turned it into something powerful. Norah started speaking publicly, not just as a news anchor, but as someone who had lived through the fear. She told her story on CBS This Morning, standing next to her doctor, hoping someone watching would take action before it was too late. She shared everything, what she went through, what she learned, and what she's doing now to protect herself. People started listening. Some even told her that her story pushed them to get checked, and in some cases, that decision saved their lives. Today, Norah gets her skin checked every few months. She wears high SPF sunscreen and uses spray tans instead of sunbathing. She's still on the news, but now she's also helping lead the fight against skin cancer.